All right, here's how we're going to do this. I make these videos too long, so I'm going to make them shorter by look at the camera by only allowing myself a few minutes before my appointment. So I have to get it done in a certain period of time, or I will run out of time. And then, of course, I can just re-record it later when I have more time if I go too long. But I'm going to try and make this a little bit shorter. And also, my mom got this from somebody and gave it to me. It's a little short in the sleeves, but it's a good office coat. There's not holes in the elbows like on my other office sweatshirts that I've been wearing. So now I wear this all the time when it's cold in my office. And what are we talking about? Okay, so 5 factors to consider when seeking a therapist. I was going to say 5 factors to consider when considering seeking a therapist. As you know, I like to say the same word in the definition of things. So that would have worked if I said it, but I caught myself. So, number 1 factor, first factor to consider is that therapists are people. None of us is greater than any of us. We're all people together. Just because someone has experience in a field does not make them an expert or above you in any way. So remember that therapists are people, just like no matter the profession, whatever the profession is. Don't take anybody's gruff. Don't, just because they're a thing, and you get credentials and stuff, it doesn't mean anything. Just people have different experiences, and just because they have different experiences than you doesn't mean that they should treat you as if you're less than. And I feel like in this culture we live in, there are some people who, because of their credentials or their station or their profession, they do tend to, or they may at times seem to, again, all I can do is what it seems to be from my perception. So if I'm looking for it, I'm going to see it, blah, blah, blah. Of course, practice what you preach, Paul. But seems like there are some people who let those things get to their heads, and then they act as if they are special, and they are just people. So remember that. Therapist is just a person. They're not special. They're just educated in a specific way, and that's what you're hiring them for, is to get that education. Number 2, trust is a two-way street. 2 for 2. I don't know. In order to make a counseling relationship work, you've got to trust the therapist or the counselor, and they've got to trust you. If they can't trust you or they don't trust you, if you see evidence that they don't trust you or you feel like you're not being trusted, maybe ask them about that. But if you don't feel like you're trusted and you don't trust them, well, obviously if you don't trust them, you don't want to be there. If you feel like they don't trust you, then maybe you don't want to be there either. So it takes trust from both sides. In order to have trust, you got to make yourself vulnerable. And in order to have a healthy counseling or therapy relationship, I think it requires some vulnerability as well. And so if you can't trust the person with your vulnerability, if you can't trust them to protect you, then maybe you don't want to be there. So trust is a two-way street. Third factor, non-judgmentality is critical. When you are seeking a therapist, you want to find someone that you can just sit with and feel acknowledged and validated and comfortable with them. You don't want to feel judged, and you don't want to feel forced to fit into their worldview or their bias or whatever. You shouldn't, from the counselor perspective or the therapist perspective, there's a lot of emphasis on remaining value neutral as the therapist, and so you want to make sure that they're being value neutral. And the reason that that's emphasized is because it's been determined through research and whatever that people will tend to adopt the values of the person that they're going to meet with for counseling or for therapy. And so if you are meeting with someone who has a different set of values than you, there's a chance that some of that might rub off on you, just by the nature of, I feel like I need a change in my life, and I'm going to talk to this person about that change. Whatever they speak from is going to come from their bias. Now, they might do a really good job of being neutral, but some of that is still going to be, it's part of their personality, so there's no way they can completely divorce themselves from it and continue to have a personality. So you want to make sure you find someone whose values you align with in some ways, because you may end up adopting some of those things. But that's kind of off the point. The point being that you want to find someone who you don't feel judged by, that you feel safe and comfortable and accepted. That's going to be crucial for you. Number 4, another factor to consider is that you're not tied into the person you initially start therapy with. It's not like you don't get one shot at this. It's not you hire somebody and they're there forever. You can change that person. Sometimes it takes a while to get to know somebody, and as you get to know them, you realize this isn't going to work out, or over time you find that you feel like you're not being trusted or validated or accepted, in which case it's okay to move on, and maybe to have that mindset up front that if this doesn't work out, I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to find someone that I feel supports and understands and acknowledges me. With that in mind, if you are in counseling with somebody and then you say, I want to find a new counselor, hopefully they'll say, okay, let me help you. I'll make a referral. Let's look for somebody that you'll feel comfortable with, or I know somebody that might be a better fit, or whatever. Hopefully that's their approach, but just be aware that some people might take it personally and then think and try to keep you there. But you're not obligated to stay there. You might be obligated by some legal force to stay in counseling or to follow treatment recommendations, but you are free to choose who you do those follow through those recommendations with. It's your choice. As far as I am aware, we still have some freedoms in America, at least. I won't speak for anywhere else. I don't live anywhere else, but in America, we still have some freedoms in choosing where we go for health care. Now, that might be limited based on your insurance or your out-of-pocket expenses and whatever, so that might be a factor to consider. But you are free to choose who you do your counseling with. You should be. If you're not, that's concerning to me, and it'd be something I'm not aware of. So you should be free to do that. So shop around, find the right fit. If you're in with somebody and you want to change, and that person seems hesitant to, or they don't want you to leave, try to figure out, is it because they think that you are, that they're afraid that you're going to leave therapy altogether, leave treatment altogether, or is it because they don't want you to leave them? That's something to be aware of, or to try and figure out. Not trying to plant things in your head that might not be there, but just these are factors to consider. That's all. It's worth having a conversation if you're in a situation like that. And the fifth thing, I've already hit on it a couple times amongst these things, but remember that the therapist works for you. Okay? So you are hiring them to perform a service for you, which is to be non-judgmental and value neutral, and to listen to you, and to provide feedback and support and suggestions of methods you could follow to enact change in your life. That's the whole thing. So you're hiring them to do that job. I still got 2 minutes, and I'm already at 8 minutes. Okay. And so, like Burger King and McDonald's, if you go to Burger King and ask for a Big Mac, they're going to tell you no. And if you go to McDonald's and ask for a Whopper, they're going to tell you no. But if you go to Burger King and ask for a Whopper, they'll say yes, and you can customize it a little bit. You can have them leave certain elements off or add certain elements on. So when you hired somebody to do counseling, doesn't mean that you can tell them exactly what to do. That's not the point. You're hiring them to perform a service, and they're going to perform that service the way that they perform that service. Maybe with some fine-tuning, like you can add the cheese or take away the onions or pickles or something like that. So there's some fine-tuning you might be able to do to the service with that person, but you can't expect them to change dramatically what they do just because you hired them. So it's important to remember that they work for you, but also to remember that they have a package of service that they already present, and if that's not what you want, then find someone else who provides what you're looking for. So that's my thoughts on that as a therapist. These are some things that I think are important to consider. For me, when somebody calls me for the first time, I like when they ask me questions about what I think about certain, like my theories, my approach to treating addiction, and maybe some personal questions. I'm happy to answer some things. Sometimes people are not, and that's fine. We gotta respect that those boundaries both ways. But I think like my first session with somebody, I kind of treat it like a job interview. I want to share what my perspective is, because if you're about to engage in counseling with me and sit for an hour a week for a period of time, it's good for you to know who I am. And then one last thought. I'm going too fast. See this? I don't like this. Cannot feel rushed. But one last thing. And I can't remember what it was. Something about trust. It's right there. Okay. So relax and let it come back to the conscious awareness. I don't know. But you're going to try. The counselor is asking you to trust them completely with some very serious things in your life. And so you've got to feel you can trust them as well. It's one thing for them to say, okay, well, tell me about that time that you were traumatized when you were 6 years old. For you to share that with them, that requires a great amount of trust from you to them, of you trusting them, and they have to be aware of that. And if they're not aware of that and they don't respect that, then maybe it's not the therapist for you. But the whole purpose is that they're supposed to be supporting you and helping you. And if you don't feel like that's being done, then maybe it's time to look around. But going into it, you can try and get that stuff, bring it up initially when you first talk to a counselor or a therapist. Talk to them about some of those things. Ask them about what they do, what their scope of practice is, and all that kind of stuff. And just remember, treat it like you're hiring them to do a job, because you are. You got the power, all the power. Keep the power, and you don't need anybody else, but you might not know that. And so if you don't know that, then maybe I'm not supposed to say things like that. But anyway, I feel like you've got the power to make the changes. You're the only one that can make those changes. And so finding the right type of person to support you as you make those changes, as you learn about how to do it and then do it, that's going to be important. So 5 factors to consider when seeking a therapist. Remember that therapists are just people. Trust is a two-way street. Non-judgmentality is critical. Shop around for the right fit, and therapist works for you. All right, that's it. If that's been helpful, then good. If not, I apologize. Thank you for watching. Bye.